Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Criminally Mental Podcast. My name is Kody, or Schizophrenic Hippie.
I'm Thug Zac, also known as Zac Galloway, and here to introduce our show is the friend of the show, the host of the VT Network, Deadman.
Welcome to the Criminally Mental Podcast, where we talk about mental health and the criminal justice system, with your two hosts, Kody Green and Zac Galloway, currently both on parole and compassionate release. Now, here's the show.
And cue Zac's comment about his voice.
Fun fact for you guys out there, Deadman, the host of the VT Network, who introduces our show, actually does voiceovers for porn.
I feel like that's not true, but I feel like every week now you're just taking a chance.
He has such a deep, calming voice that he does what they call audio porn. You know, it's you just listen to it. It's very hot. I suggest everyone go check him out.
All right. Like I said, I'm pretty sure at this point you're just saying random things to see if they're gonna be true again.
That's more or less my life at this stage.
Okay, well that makes sense. For everyone who is wondering, I pulled a Zac, and so I need to have a formal apology about that.
Hardcore Zac.
Yeah. This was like a textbook Zac move. I never posted last week's episode on any podcast streaming platforms. So if you were wondering why you haven't seen it, it's because I never posted it. So tonight, I will be posting not only tonight's episode, but last week's episode. So, I mean, it works out because now you guys get double the content this week. I mean, none of the content last week, but double the content this week is how I'm looking at it.
This is our job.
Yeah, that's true.
This is a real thing. But yeah, so you'll get both the episodes up tonight. This, only I can be me. You have to do the stuff.
I know. I always forget that I'm supposed to do stuff, post stuff and get everything ready. Speaking of that, we haven't posted on the Criminally Mental Podcast Instagram or TikTok in quite a while. And I'm not sure if you were aware of this, Zac. We hit 30,000 followers on the Criminally Mental Podcast TikTok.
Did we?
Yeah, which is crazy because we never post on it.
Yikes, we really need to do that. Let's take days where I'll moderate it and you'll moderate it or something, because we got to have a switch off.
Yeah, but just in case you guys didn't know that, we do have an Instagram and a TikTok for the Criminally Mental Podcast. And most of you do watch the Criminally Mental Podcast live on our YouTube. But just so you guys know, those platforms are out there if you want to check them out. I promise we are going to make more of an effort to be posting on both of those platforms, as well as continuing to do the show weekly and post the auditory version of the show weekly.
We promise. Pinky promise.
Well, let's not get too crazy.
But anyway, guys, as you may have heard tonight, we kind of noticed that we had a backlog of questions and stuff that we haven't answered and that sort of thing. So we figured we'd take an episode and just do a little live Q&A with you guys. We've selected some questions from our TikTok, but we're also going to take some lives from the audience here today. So do you want to just jump into it, Code, or what?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead? I know. So not only did I forget to post the episode last week, but you came prepared with some questions, didn't you?
I did.
I feel like something's wrong in the Matrix. I feel like I don't know. Just go. If you got a question, go for it. I need to stew in this for a little bit.
Just stew and think. This is what it feels like to be me. All right.
Yeah. It's not great. It's not great.
Rough. That's what I tell people. Anyway, this first one comes from @Mama Ganja, who, by the way, is Carmela. She's a follower, a friend of mine. I love her a lot. I'm 1 year sober next month, but it's starting to not feel worth it sometimes. I still get really strong urges to use, and I don't know why. Is that normal? You want to take the first part of that, Cody?
I mean, I'll start. I know you're going to have probably more to say on this than me because I struggled with addiction, but you definitely went through a really rough time with addiction.
Yeah.
So my opinion is I still have cravings and urges, especially if I'm dealing with really stressful times in my life. And I feel like I don't like to say that's normal, but I feel like we also need to normalize the fact that you can have those feelings and still be stronger than the urges themselves. So I'm like 7 years sober now, and the fact that I still think about, using is a huge point to make, because that person said they were a year sober.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of, and me and Zac have both stepped away from the recovery community on social media because of the toxicity in that community. But I would consider myself a recovering addict, and every single day is a milestone. And so the fact that that person has made it a year, I want to say congratulations. That is a huge accomplishment, and they should be really, really proud of that. But just keep pushing on, and I think it is normal in my personal experience. I don't know about you, Zac.
First of all, Carmela, congratulations on a year. That is amazing. And just kind of echo a lot what Kody said. But there's one thing in particular that I know from me. We're not in the 12-step program, that sort of thing. But one thing that I've learned in my recovery is that I'm always going to be an addict. I'm always going to have those urges. No matter how good things are going, I could just be sitting on the couch and suddenly like, you know what? Doing a whole bunch of heroin sounds great right now.
Yep.
Like it'll just come out of nowhere and I'll get that urge. And the only thing that works for me is if I have something to replace or distract that with. Because for me, at least, all the times that was, I would learn the things like just take a breath, it'll pass. Like that was bullshit. I just sit in my head and I would go crazy. So I got into working out. I got really big into that. I started creating more on TikTok. Believe it or not, TikTok is a great rehabilitation tool for me. It helps me stay accountable to people, and it gets me involved with something every day. You need to have something that's going to fill that void or at least distract you in some way. If that's a hobby, whatever it is, but there needs to be something that just occupies your mind so you don't think about using drugs in that moment. And that works for me. Does it work all the time? No, absolutely not. There are times where the urge is so intense that, I'll do something like I'll smoke CBD or I'll take a CBD gummy or something like that. I'll have a cigarette. There are coping methods that are healthy, and you need to just learn what your route for recovery is going to be and how you're going to do it. You don't have to do it the same way that everyone else does it. There's lots of roads. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, no, and that's a really good point. And when it comes to healthy coping mechanisms, this is where I think me and Zac differ from some of the recovery community, because I never had an issue with alcohol, so I drink occasionally. And there's even people in the recovery community who would consider smoking cigarettes using. So it's like, I would recommend, I'm not trying to slam the recovery community. I know it comes across as that. Me and Zac, I think at times in our lives, have been a part of the recovery communities. Just online, the communities can be very toxic. In person, I found a lot of help going to peer support groups. I wasn't a big follower of the 12-step program, but I did still go to groups so I could talk to people, hear stories, and I did find a lot of success in that. But I feel online was rough, because online there's always toxicity.
I think the thing about online is no matter what community it is, if it's furries, if it's Christians, if it's people in recovery, they're going to be the most toxic fucking group. Like those are the only people you hear from online. The worst, the most toxic, and the loudest. That's about it.
I like how you went to talk about groups, and furries were the first thing that came to your mind.
Obviously, that's how the order goes. Furries, Christians, and people in recovery. That's that is the TikTok communities that I follow, obviously.
All right. Well, more power to you.
I'm really, really trying to take over Fur Talk. Really trying to.
All right. I think you had another question from TikTok, but if you guys want to start putting questions into the chat here, I'll save a couple that I see, but just start throwing them in there so that way, as soon as we get done with this next question, we can start addressing some of the questions here from our live.
Right. All right. So the next one coming up is from mh.stories. Are there certain signs of a chomo, like things they say or do? I'm worried for a friend. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, chomo is usually a prison term, but it's kind of fallen into civilian life. A child molester, a pedophile, a predator. Are there any signs of them? This is one of the toughest things about trying to keep our children safe and trying to keep our community safe, is that these fuckers are so good at what they do.
Yeah.
That the majority of them just seem like everyday people, like you and me. But one thing that I've noticed, because I've only really known a few, and I've only known one that I knew him before it came out that he was a pedophile. And something I always noticed about him is he was very often coming to the defense in conversation of people who were accused of sexual crimes.
Yeah.
Like if there was a case, where there was like a teacher who slept with a student, like he made a comment like, well, that student was only 17. She probably wanted it. Like just small things like that looking back on, I really should have stepped back and said, okay, there's something up with this guy. But for me, that's probably the only real red flag I can think of. But what about you, Cody?
I think you nailed it with that first part. People that are usually involved with those types of crimes are master manipulators, and they're really good at picking out vulnerable children. So they're going to be able to know who's going to be susceptible to their manipulation. And it's messed up, but that's why they can go so long without getting caught or getting in trouble. And that's why I think that's why people in prison especially despise them, because they're able to take advantage of people who are already in such a vulnerable spot. And this is obviously, we've talked about Eric B. Zink, and he's the one that always comes to mind for me, because he was doing that with mental health, which is one of the most already vulnerable groups you could gear towards. So it is about them being so good at hiding who they really are, which makes it tough to notice if they show any signs. But like you said, Zach, trying to defend people who have been accused of it or charged of it, that would be a red flag for me too. I didn't even think of that, but
well, I was just thinking, because there's only one guy I've known who ended up he was also a teacher who slept with one of his 16-year-old students, I think. And I knew him beforehand. I actually didn't know him too well at the fact, but that was just one of the things he would do, and he would defend points like that. Like if someone said, "Oh, I don't think that girl should wear that. It's over sexualizing, and she's so young." He'd say something like, "Well, a woman come into their sexuality very young these days." Just like certain little fucking red flag phrases that came out of his mouth that I'll never look past again. So that's about it.
Yeah. Did you have any more TikTok questions before we transition to some on here?
Why don't I got a bunch, but how about this one? At Red's Madame Cupcake, my husband is coming home on parole in June. Anything I can do to make his transition easier? He's scared. Cody, if you want to attack him.
Yeah, I would say one thing that really helps people with criminal records is obviously when people get out, they want to get back to work so they can make money, so they can be comfortable and happy. If you could take preemptive steps like having dress clothes that they could use for interviews, do interview prep with them, like mock interviews. Me and my wife do that before we have big interviews. We do interview prep. We sit down, pretend it's a real interview, go back and forth. And so little things like that. Obviously, I started my nonprofit because I know that people getting out of jail or prison, there's a certain type of culture in there that is not professional. So when you get out, you're not going to act in the way you should at a workplace. And it's not necessarily the person's fault. It's just when you've been around a certain type of attitude for so long, you tend to inherit bits of that. Yeah, exactly. And so anything you can do to help them with that, because I am a firm believer that getting a job right out of jail or prison is a huge way to reduce recidivism and a huge way to get people comfortable being on the outside.
I definitely agree with that. And those are all good points. One thing I would definitely say is a lot of people, when their loved one or someone gets out of prison or jail, they have this idea like, we're going to do all these things. I need to take him here. I'm going to do that. And this is something that affects me in my life to this day. I still have an issue being around, like, especially large groups of people that I don't really know.
Yeah.
I still get uncomfortable in a lot of social situations. So try your best to maybe compromise with them and find activities that are probably just you and him for a bit, because him getting used to knowing how to be around you is going to be rough.
Yeah.
When you get around just men, some violent men at that, for a long period of time, you kind of forget how to be soft and gentle with someone. So give him time just to be with you, just to adjust. That would be something I would suggest. And of course, he's scared. Everyone's scared coming home. If you say you're not scared, you're lying. It's just, there's so many thoughts in your mind. I mean, I can remember before I was getting out, I was thinking, man, it has been 4 years since I have filled out a job application, since I've had like a normal conversation with people, since drugs weren't a daily part of my life. What am I even going to do during my day? Like, these are all questions that everyone who's being released from prison has to ask themselves. So him being scared is actually a healthy thing to some degree. He's aware of the seriousness of the situation, but already he is leaps and bounds ahead of a lot of people, probably most people, because he has you. He has that support system. He has someone that he's coming home to. And I have all the faith in the world that you guys are going to be great and that he's going to adjust. So best of luck to you.
I have one more thing to add to all that.
Shut up,
my other piece of advice is, don't be upset if they decide they want to sleep on the floor instead of in the bed, because going from a prison bed to a regular bed can be almost too much of a transition. It's like, so I always compare it, if I'm going to compare it to something, you know how when someone is like starving, you can't just let them have a buffet afterwards, because like, so if someone is like trapped on an island starving for like a month, you can't just like pick them up from the island and let them eat a bunch, because it can make them really sick or even like die. Whereas it's the kind of, it feels like that with beds. If you like get to a regular bed, it messes with you. I couldn't sleep in a regular bed for like a month or two after I got out, because you get so used to the metal cot with the
inch of fucking little pretend mattress. Yeah, that's
yeah.
I slept on the floor for a couple nights straight, and then kind of off and on for a bit. So yeah, that's very good advice.
And I only say it because my wife thought I was mad at her, or like she didn't get it. She thought I was making up reasons to not sleep in the bed. I'm like, I can't. I physically cannot sleep in this bed. We have a really plushy bed. I'm like, I can't do it.
God, man. You know what was also crazy when I got home? I took like the longest showers.
Oh my God. Okay, did you guys have the push button showers?
Yeah, the ones where you had to push it and you had to keep it in or else it wouldn't. Oh my gosh, that was so annoying.
And so my favorite thing in the world is a nice hot shower. And they really strip that from you. Like, and it doesn't seem like a big thing. Like, mental health wise, long hot showers help me more than medication, it seems like sometimes. Seriously, it's something about just being able to be in a super hot shower. And that's the other thing, not being able to control the temperature in those showers.
You had two temperatures. It was either moderately lukewarm or ice cold.
Yeah.
And for everyone who doesn't know, there was just one button on the wall that you had to push in, and it had like 10 to 15 seconds that it would run water, and then after 15 seconds it would shut off, because that's how they conserve water in prison. So that was what you deal with there. Every 15 seconds you had to hit the button to keep the water going, and it was so annoying. Oh yeah,
that was the worst. We just went on a tangent there with that question, but there's probably a lot of more things we could think of with that too. But here's another question here. How do you guys deal with nightmares? I know I struggle with them, and honestly don't know how you guys do it sometimes. So I don't know about you, Zac. I know you suffer from like some PTSD and stuff. I personally haven't had an issue with nightmares since I started antipsychotics. I have an antipsychotic that I take right before bed that makes me sleep through the night. Before that, I would have I would have really terrible nightmares that would lead into like delusion when I woke up, and it became a really serious issue where I was having trouble telling, because I was delusional, I was having trouble telling if I was awake or asleep or what was going on. So it was really important for me to get medication that kept me asleep at night. I haven't had a dream in probably like 2 to 3 years.
God, really?
Yeah, I don't dream at night anymore. My meds just like
Just
I'm
woke
out
up.
and then all of a sudden I'm awake. Like that's it. So
I am on the other end of the spectrum with their brother. So I don't talk about this much, but I have very bad nightmares to the point that my fiance sometimes has to sleep in the living room because my night terrors get so bad. It's only happened once, I think, but I'll often wake up sometimes screaming, stuff like that, and it's rough. And it doesn't ever really get better. But the only thing that helps me is I've learned some coping mechanisms. I've learned that when I wake up out of that nightmare, to count, to breathe, to realize where I am, to understand it was just a nightmare. And some of the worst parts about suffering from really bad nightmares, especially if they're like night terrors like mine or associated with PTSD, is you get to this point where you're afraid to go to sleep. When you're laying down and you just go, what fucking horror movie am I going to right now? But if you just learn to cope with when after they happen and before the fact, going to bed, some of the best things you can do are like relaxation exercises, something that mellows your mind out, reading poetry, listening to positive music. If you're able to get your mind in a place where it's a little more relaxed and at ease before you go to sleep, it'll often help with how you dream. So those are just, some tips that I use. But yes, I absolutely suffer from nightmares.
I honestly, it's one of the few things that I'm so grateful for that I don't deal with anymore, because like I said, I did, but yeah, I didn't have coping mechanisms. So I actually learned a little bit there too, because mine was in the height of my delusion. So it was just medication was the only thing that really fixed it.
You mentioned that it'll kind of go into a delusion with you. What does that mean? Like you'll wake up and you'll think your nightmare is real, or?
So have you ever had dreams where you wake up in the dream, but you don't actually wake up, and then you wake up for real and you're like, oh, I was dreaming?
Isn't that the entire plot of Inception?
Okay, but yes, it is. But have you ever had a dream like that?
Honestly, not that I can really recall, but I can, understand it.
It's actually a pretty common phenomenon for people to have that. The difference is it was like I never fully woke up because I was delusional. So whatever was happening in my nightmare, I would wake up and it would continue happening in my real life because I was delusional. So the things I was seeing and hearing in my nightmares would continue even after I woke up. Like I couldn't escape it. You know how they show in movies people having nightmares, they wake up in the sweats?
Right.
I woke up and it was still going on, essentially.
Fuck that, man. I don't want to do that. I don't like that.
That was why it was so important for me. And this was like even after I was like just getting started with medication. Once my like hallucinations settled down during the day, I was having so much worse hallucinations and delusions at night. So I had to start taking meds right before bed. I take like 6 pills a day, and one of them is right before bed to combat that like waking up with delusions.
That sounds terrible.
And I was going to pull this question up. It's for me, but it kind of goes with what I was just talking about as actually. Liam Kleeman asked, are your hallucinations worse at night? Because I find scariest hallucinations I have come out after dark. So obviously everyone with hallucinations, schizophrenia, any disorder like that is going to be a little different. I will say, Liam, that my particular hallucinations are more frequent at night, but I've kind of associated it more with me having less to keep me distracted and busy. So during the day, I have less hallucinations, and I've been able to kind of understand that it's more because of what I'm doing through the day. So I'm busy during the day. There's less time for my mind to wander and for me to experience symptoms. Whereas at night, I do have more hallucinations. And I don't know if you watch horror movies or anything, but anything could feed into your hallucinations, which is why I don't personally watch a lot of horror movies. But And like I said, it's going to be different with everyone. That's kind of how I've rationalized it in my head with my symptoms. So,
I love horror movies on the other side.
yeah. So we have another question here from Hell's Fighter, for both Kody and Zac. What was the first thing you did when you got out?
All right. When I got out, I wasn't supposed to get out the day I got out, but I got out. It was so butt fucking early in the morning. They let me out at 4 a.m.
Oh my
middle of nowhere. Yeah, I'm serious. I'm in the middle of nowhere. The only thing next to the facility, well, obviously there was a town, but the only thing next to the facility within like real walking distance was this Circle K. And I had to go there and use their phone to call my grandmother and ask if she can come pick me up. So I had to go to Circle K with no money. I was left with 40 cents. That was what was on my book. So I got a little card that had 40 cents on it. I went in there, asked to use the phone. This guy asked me if I had just gotten out. I told him yes. He said I could not use the phone. So I had to walk around. Eventually I found I think it was like a McDonald's, and one of their workers let me use the phone to call my grandmother. So the first thing I did was have a panic attack because I had nowhere to go and no way to get a hold of anybody. So.
And then they wonder why the recidivism rate is so high. You literally got out and had nothing there.
Nothing. Yeah.
And see, that bothers me so much. So I was picked up by my wife and went straight home and slept for like a day and a half.
What was your first meal when you got out? What was your
Culver's? So you came to Culver's when you were in the Midwest. I got that was the only thing I did before I went home and went to sleep. I went to Culver's, which if you're from the Midwest, you know is a burger place. I got some cheese curds. I think I actually remember the full meal. I got a double cheeseburger. I got chili cheese fries, cheese curds, a large cherry Pepsi, and a chocolate custard, which for those of you who don't know is like ice cream. And that was my first meal when I got out. I didn't even eat it there. We took it to go. I just wanted to be home at my house in my own bed. And fortunately, I had my wife, who was ready to pick me up that day. And yeah, I can't imagine getting out and just being like, well, what do I fucking do now?
It was rough, man. Like there was a minute where like I was literally sitting there and I knew 2 phone numbers. I knew my grandmother's phone number and I knew the phone number of a guy that I used to run with. And I can remember looking at that phone and thinking, maybe I'll just call that guy, that friend of mine who I used to, sell and do drugs with. I was like, maybe I'll just call him to let him know I'm out. Maybe I'll just say hi. But I didn't. I called my grandmother. And I firmly believe to this day, the reason that I'm probably still alive or not locked up is because I called my grandmother instead of that guy that day.
Yeah, that's a crazy story, man, because if you think about it, that could have been so different. If you would have made that phone call versus the call to your grandma, that could have been.
Yeah, that would have been the absolute crossroads of my life, I feel. But as far as my first meal goes, I remember when my grandma picked me up, I got a Whopper from Burger King, fries, a soda, then went to Taco Bell and got a chalupa and the cinnamon bun bites, the cinnamon
yes,
and a Baja Blast. And then after that, it was about lunchtime, so we went to Denny's and I had 2 waffles.
Yeah, I love asking people what food they got right when they got out.
What was your first meal when you got out? Because everyone knows what their first meal was.
Well, and usually what it is for people is, what did you think of the most while you were in there? Because that's usually the first thing people get when they get out. Taco Bell was a pretty close second for me. It was definitely like a day or 2 after I got out when I went to Taco Bell. So your moderator here, Shannon, asked, what are some of the most memorable things you've received from your P.O. box?
Well, first thing, Shannon, this webcam that I'm using is probably one of the most memorable. Thank you so much for that. Outside of that, like memorable, I got a package from Oregon that had a whole bunch of postcards from Oregon, this really cool Bigfoot sticker that's now on the car, just a bunch of like candy from there. And it was so cool because it was just like, this is a little piece of where I live. I'm sharing that with you. So I thought that was pretty cool. But what about you, Kody?
I have a couple favorites. I did receive a package, a like really big package of Australian goodies, snacks, candies, like Vegemite, which I heard you have some.
Did you get that from Kesley?
No, it's from a follower who I actually haven't heard of in a while that I've tried to check on. It's a follower who it was back when I had like 10,000 followers. It was a long time.
Wow.
But so someone told me you had Vegemite for the first time, or you have it there.
Yeah, somebody sent me, my friend Kesley, who now lives in Australia, sent me a thing of Vegemite, and
it's so bad.
It's so very bad. Like,
well,
why?
And how did you eat it? Because
I just put it on a spoon, and I mean,
that's what I did. I put it on a spoon, and apparently you're supposed to like spread it on bread with butter. And I was like, if you have to dilute it that much, what's the point of it?
Yeah, but I mean, I have some garlic bread. I might try it on that.
Yeah, I don't think I could get myself to eat it again. It's so bad.
That was an offense to the taste and spirit.
Yeah,
but I'll give it a shot on a video.
But so going forward with like what else I've gotten, I've received so many. I've actually received letters from people in prison, in jail, and in psychiatric facilities that have sent me like letters and drawings, and like I receive a lot of like gifts and stuff. But I think the letters I get from people who are like actively struggling. I don't know if you know this, Zac. There are people who listen to our podcast in jail and prison because apparently some jails and prisons have iPads now, which I didn't know.
Oh yeah, my facility got them right as I was getting out. But that's actually the second time I've been told that. So
that to me was mind blowing because they never had that when I was in. So I thought that was really cool that there are people who are currently in just you. I mean, you remember what it's like to be in one of the worst times of their lives, listening to this, and I hopefully getting some hope that things can be better when they get out.
I feel that one of the main goals of this show has and always will be to try to give hope to people who are incarcerated, are in psych facilities, have been or will be. I think a lot of people, you get this opinion that when you get locked up in any way, either prison or psych ward, you have this feeling like it's over for me. This is the end of my story. I've fallen this far, but we're living examples that that's very much so not the case.
Yeah,
but that is cool. That is cool.
So Hansel Fuller said, your skits of TikTok make people think that prison is fun, and I don't think that you can convey it enough that it's not.
Well, this one's directed to me because you obviously don't do content.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem, bro. I address this pretty often because it is something that I try to keep aware of, that I don't want to present prison as a fun place, but this is how I feel about it. You've all heard the narrative of tough prison, tough guy prison. When you go to prison, you're a tough guy. That is what everyone knows. Everyone knows it's violent. Everyone knows about the fights. Everyone knows about the racism, the drugs. These are common knowledge. What people don't know or hear, I don't think very often at all, is these are all still humans.
Yes.
With human emotions, human feelings. Prisoners feel sad. They miss people. There is this image that is concocted by Hollywood mostly, that you're just this rough, tough criminal.
Yeah.
And I think people need to know that there's everyday people in there who committed, a basic crime, who miss their mom, who miss their dad, who talk about D&D, who have arguments over whether or not Superman or Goku would win, because they're people. And I think the fact that that sort of content has shocked so many people is just proof that we need to normalize inmates being human.
Yeah.
So that's why I tell the story as I do in the way I do, so you can know they're human.
I love that because I feel like when people see news article of prisoners being treated poorly or not having basic amenities, I always see comments or hear comments. People say things like, don't like it, don't go to jail. We need to remember that these are still living people, a lot of which just made mistakes. Most people in jails and prisons anymore are there for minor drug violations. we can't treat them like they're garbage. There's still people, mostly people who are just struggling, made mistakes, and are ready to get out and try to live a regular life.
And you need to understand that this message that criminals are treated bad because, that's who they are. They are bad people. This is propaganda for a purpose. The entire system, the prison system, is set up to make you feel that way. So you don't mind the fact that they're only spending 30 cents a day to feed an average prisoner. And that's okay with people until they find out that that prisoner is Shaggy.
Yeah.
Or until they find out that that prisoner is Teddy. Suddenly they realize that this isn't happening to this cold, hard rapist who deserves everything he gets. This is a guy who maybe crashed a car or, made a mistake. He's a human. And it's a dangerous place to go. When you realize that you've been okay with how they've been treated, and then you realize that they're human, that hurts for a lot of people. So it's safer to just keep the mindset of don't like it, don't go to jail. That's a lot easier for people.
Yeah, the U.S. government has made it they've done a really good job at making every single person in the United States prison system look like a horrible convict. And don't get me wrong, there are horrible people in our prisons. There are definitely people who need to be there, but it is not a majority of the people there. I would argue it is a minority of the people there. And on top of all of that, we need to remember that the reason they do this is so they can justify slavery. People are working in jails and prisons for fractions of a dollar. And the only way the U.S. can justify that is because when we wrote up our Constitution, we said when they rewrote, what was it, the Civil Rights Act?
Yeah.
Whatever they rewrote, it was specifically that there will not be slavery, except in the case of incarceration. So they needed a way to justify slave labor, and prisons were that for the United States.
They still are in a lot of cases. If you think about it, almost all of our prisons are now for profit.
Yep.
Which means that all of their upkeep is being handled by inmates. The cleaning, the electrical, the plumbing. A lot of people don't know this. All facilities that are for-profit prisons and also federal ones as well, they don't spend any money keeping up their facility. They don't spend any overhead on doing that because they make inmates do it. You don't have a choice. You have to do a job.
Yep. And
you're going to get paid 11 cents an hour on that job. So that's the reality of that situation. That is absolutely slavery.
Yeah. We have another question here. It's how did the both of you react the first time you found out you were going to jail or prison?
You want to take that one first or should I?
Yeah. So my case was pretty complicated. It dragged on for quite a while. My entire court case, I wasn't actually arrested. I had to turn myself in. So after my car accident, I was released. They ran my blood work. They did all that. And it wasn't until about 6 months after that I received my criminal charges. And it wasn't until a year and a half later that all of my court cases were done and I received my charges. I knew probably 3 months beforehand about what I was looking at for time. Obviously, you still hope that they're going to turn it over. So in the courtroom, right before we went in, I remember the judge telling me, he's like, I don't know what to do with this case because on one hand, you were clearly struggling with addiction. You have made changes in your life. On the other hand, someone was severely injured. And so they gave me exactly what my lawyer thought they were going to give me. And the only people in the courtroom were me, the judge, and my mom. And immediately all I hear is my mom's a very emotional person. And it was just me and my mom crying essentially. And it was rough, but I knew that it was a possibility. I had been going through the process for a while. I was fortunate enough that I didn't have to sit in jail like a lot of people do while they're awaiting trial.
I was about to say that I don't mean to cut you off, but I was so relieved when I finally got sentenced.
Yeah.
Because I was rotting in county. If you don't get bailed out, or if you have a situation like Kody, you have to be in county through your entire case.
Yep.
from the first day, I wanted to sign whatever paper. I'm like, fuck, just take me to prison. I'm done with this county bullshit. I mean, all I wanted to do was sign the paperwork. I just wanted out of there. You know, if I can give me 3 meals a day in prison, I'll take this over this bullshit in county any day of the week. But when I found out, it was just a relief. I mean, it was just, oh, okay, at least this bullshit is just starting. You know, like now finally I can get this over with, that sort of thing. And you know, in reality, I had made peace with the concept of me getting locked up a long time before, because I was a criminal. I was a professional criminal. That was my lifestyle. That was what I did every day. So I had already come to terms with the fact that sooner or later I was going to do time. So it really wasn't that traumatic for me. And plus, I gotten busted before plenty of times, so it wasn't that big of an ordeal. But for me, it was just relief.
Yeah. And it's kind of crazy how different situations can be for people, because I know, like you said, there's always people in county who are just waiting for their trial because they just want to. And there's, you know, the people who just are hoping that there's a mishap in their trial and they're going to get out. And then there's the people who are telling you every day, they're like, oh, my trial's tomorrow. It sounds like they're overly optimistic. And then,
yeah, it always feels so bad for those guys. You know, they're sitting there like, I got my hearing tomorrow, man. I think they're going to throw this evidence out. You know, I'm getting out of here. Like,
and then you see him come back in the next day and it's like, oh, I don't know about you, but I was about to say I was not delusional. I was very delusional, but not about the time I was doing. Like, every single month I was in there, the detective who busted me, he came in to visit me every single month and tried to get me to give out names of local people. And he said, you could get out. We can get you out in the next couple months instead of doing your full sentence. Every single month he came. And every single month I was like, yeah, no, we're just going to like this. It is what it is. I'm here. This is what we're doing now. Whether I liked it or not, it was me that put me there. It was no one else. And I was like, what is a couple months out really going to help my situation, especially if people found out that I was in there singing, and that stuff doesn't stay hidden.
No, it's for anybody listening out there, if you're ever in a situation where a cop tells you, if you give us this information, we'll protect you or we'll keep it a secret, they're lying to you so hard.
Your name will be on a report somewhere, and the other person's lawyer will show them that report.
Absolutely. It goes on record. If they tell you this bullshit, like it'll be sealed, it's not. It won't. They're lying. That's what they do. They lie.
Even if they manage to conceal it, people find out.
Yeah,
they're going to notice when your sentence was 5 years and you got out in 6 months.
Yeah. They do the math. It's not hard to figure out.
Yeah. So next question is, this isn't a question, but have you seen these? So someone just commented, there's a dude on TikTok that's locked up that makes TikToks. If you watch those, just keep in mind that the people you see are going to end up probably being in prison the rest of their lives. If they get caught with a cell phone in there, which they're going to, because those TikToks go viral.
They go viral. Yeah.
Anytime I see one of those TikToks, it's always at like 1 million views. And I'm like, you can't tell me that one of the correctional officers or higher ups haven't found that TikTok and searched everyone.
That is a dangerous contraband charge, sneaking contraband into a facility charge. That's an extra 4 to 8 years, depending on the facility that you're at.
Yeah.
Every time I see those TikToks, all I'm thinking is like, y'all are snitching on yourself hard.
Yeah.
I mean, like that is
it's one thing to have a cell phone, but to use it for TikToks.
Oh.
It's like going on your Facebook page and being like, yo, I had to be in solitary yesterday. What's everyone else up to? Like, don't be dumb.
It seems so basic to not do that, but somehow this guy from a prison TikToker, we're prison TikTokers, but a TikToker who's in prison reached out to me, DM'd me, and I legit told him, like, dog, I can't talk to you. Like, like, I ain't talking to you. Like, I've been there. I've done my time. I don't know what you have going on, but I'm just not getting involved.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, I'm not getting on your list.
So if for any reason, like I said, we have listeners who are currently in jail or prison. Y'all, get your cell phones. That's fine. Don't post any TikTok.
Don't post anything on TikTok.
Yeah, like be smart about it. Don't be dumb. You know better. That's the thing, is the people doing it know better. I honestly think if you're in prison posting TikToks, you want more time. Like,
yeah, it blows my mind that people do that. It really does.
Yeah. The next question we have here is, what is one thing you would change about how mental health is seen in the world and in the prison system?
Okay. In prison, mental health is terrible.
Yeah.
You basically have two options. One, you're going to be either an unmedicated or improperly medicated inmate in general population, still struggling with your mental health without really an outlet or a method of coping with it. Or two, you're going to be sent to a psych ward.
Yep.
I can't stress how terrible some psych wards are. In my facility in Arizona, psych wards have you four-pointed, which means that all day you are strapped to a bed with your arms and legs attached to the points of the bed. You are let out of that bed 3 times a day to use the restroom, and you will have one arm let out once or 3 times a day to eat. That is your life all day, every day. So those are the options, and they're terrible. I would love to see this. What I would love to see happen won't happen, and this is why. Because if we start addressing the mental health problems that we have with a lot of our inmates, we're going to be forced to realize that a lot of things that we have people locked up for are just that. We have a lot of people locked up for being mentally ill.
Yeah, 100%.
That's terrible.
Zac, you want to say it or should I?
No, you go ahead. You enjoy this one.
You know, it's my favorite thing to say.
I do.
A majority of people in prison and jail should not be in prison and jail. They should be in psychiatric facilities and recovery clinics. And you will hear me say that. If you listen to this podcast for the next 5 years, you will hear me say that 100 more times.
It's true. That's a true number.
Yeah, pretty accurate. I already mapped it out going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And my thing about, this is obviously hits home to me. When it comes to mental health, we need to be more real about mental health. We need to destigmatize every mental illness for what it actually is. People still look at schizophrenia like it's what you've seen on TV or movies when it's not.
Right.
Same thing with like DID, some of those like really misunderstood illnesses, but also we treat anxiety and depression like they're nothing because a lot of people deal with it, but then we treat it like it's not as big of an issue. I could get into a psychiatrist right now. You know why? Because I have hallucinations. My wife has an impossible time getting a psychiatrist to see her because she only, quotation mark, deals with depression and anxiety. In my mind, there's days where I think she has it way harder. And so I would love to see just more understanding about illnesses. And when it comes to the prison system, Zac was absolutely right about the medication and everything. But I'll also say I wasn't diagnosed before I went to jail. And while I was in jail, I had to stay in solitary confinement. And when I got out, I knew I was ready to finally seek help and get a diagnosis. Good fucking luck trying to get a diagnosis in jail or prison. Good fuck. They don't want to give you a diagnosis.
They will not give you a diagnosis in jail or prison. They have to treat you.
Exactly. Yeah. And they don't want that. They knew that if they gave me a diagnosis of schizophrenia, I'm going to have to see doctors more often. I'm going to need more meds. They didn't want to deal with it. And so I had to wait several months until I got out before I could seek mental health, which is insane to me that I had to go. Like, I was finally ready after like a year and a half, almost 2 years. I was finally ready. And they were basically like, yeah, that's kind of your problem. Sounds like a you problem.
It sounds like a you issue to me.
Yeah, but obviously there's so much we need to do with mental health worldwide, in our country, in our prisons, in our schools. Like, I could go on for days about this.
Something that I would love to see offered is a real for an exiting inmate, for there to be like therapy or even group sessions, something like that. Because as of now, we kind of have this, okay, you did your time, go fuck yourself, talk to your PO. But, you know, most people leave prison very shattered, damaged, hurt, scared, and there is no real outlet or coping mechanism for them. That's why a lot of people do things like turn to drugs, turn to alcohol, go back to their old ways, you know, reoffend. But one thing I'd love to see changed is us actually have a reintroduction program in this country. Maybe something even so much as like during the last 6 months of your sentence, you know, you're on furlough or something. You work outside the prison, you come back. Like, I think that would be a great way to reintegrate people into society.
Yeah, anything like that. Any programs to get people. Like I said, though, it's a company. They want recidivism rates to be high. They want people to come back in. That's how they make their money.
There's a lot of people out there who say things like, "Oh, that's ridiculous." You know, they don't want recidivism. Like, okay, if the government doesn't, whatever. I'm not going to argue with you about whether the government wants people locked up or not, because it's whatever. I will absolutely argue with you that a private prison wants more prisoners because it's a business. It's like saying they don't want customers. They, of course, want customers. That's the entire point. Their mission statement is to make money. You need to understand that.
So this next question we have is how did your jail or prison handle your mental health? And so I know I just kind of touched base on that, but the reason I brought the question up again is because I think it's important. And Zac, I'm sure you saw this with Shaggy too. It got to a point where once I knew they weren't going to help me, I had to basically hide it, because I knew that once they decided that we weren't going to help you with your mental illness, I had to realize that there's a chance they could try to transfer me to a psych facility. And like Zac said, that's not where you want to be. And I know in your skits and story times, you've mentioned that too with Shaggy, where you would pretty much cover for him so that, you know, they wouldn't know that he was suffering. But I also experienced the same thing where the institution itself, horrible. The people I was in with, amazing. People really didn't mess with me because they could tell something was wrong with me. And this goes back to prisoners being people, being humans. Obviously, there's going to be people who tried to mess with me, but it didn't take long for everyone else to be like, hey, he's got enough going on. Go fuck with someone else. Like, there's plenty of people. There's plenty other people to fuck with. Maybe don't fuck with the guy who's talking to a bench, thinking that there's someone there. Like, maybe let that guy be. And I didn't realize it until I got out, you know, because at that time I was delusional. I was constantly hallucinating. And then I got out and looked back, and I was like, I was incredibly lucky. And I think most people are good. Obviously, there's going to be exceptions, but most people are going to help. I don't know if you remember, there was a guy on TikTok with, I believe he had autism and another disability, and he asked me, you, and Colin all to duet him and like give our advice on and like let him know if he went in, what would people do?
Yeah, I duetted that.
Yeah, so all three of us duetted it, and I went back and watched, and we all kind of said the same thing. Like, obviously, depends on what you go in for, but as long as it's nothing like pedo shit, most people are going to keep an eye out for you. And that was a game changer when I started looking at prison and all of that. So,
and it's so weird because it's hard for people to understand convict code. And again, it kind of goes back to how we portray inmates in convicted felons and just prisoners in media, because we're not terrible people. You know, you're not just going to drop somebody who's mentally handicapped off and we're going to eat them. You know, I mean, we all have families. We all have maybe someone in our life that is like that. So yeah, the prisoners probably will look out for someone a lot more than the COs ever will in that situation.
Yep. Well, and I think this transitions really well into talking about Zac being able to shave his old man balls. Zac, do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Would absolutely love to, Kody. As you guys know, we have the Lawnmower 3.0, which is the sponsored item from Manscaped, which is the company that sponsors us. And as you also know, it comes with some pretty other awesome things. This ball perfume, or ball deodorant, and what was the other one? Toner. And
Toner, yeah.
We have, what is it, Mother's Day coming up?
Yeah, we do have Mother's Day coming up. Weird plug for that, but okay.
Because I was going to bring up that I've gotten a lot of feedback from some of our female followers that said they actually bought the Manscaped thing and it works just the same on them. So, hey, just an idea for Mother's Day. Throw that out there. It might be a little weird. You decide. I don't know.
All right, that was actually a pretty good plug. I'm proud of you, Zach. That was pretty good. And do you remember? I forgot. What is the code they can use to get 20% off and free shipping? Because I don't remember. Like, I know I made the code, but I'm kind of drawing a blank on what it was. Do you remember?
I'm gonna kill everything you love. The code, the free shipping and 20% off the code is Gallowop at manscaped.com. And for those of you watching the show live, that is, of course, large letters on the banner at the bottom of the screen.
And for those of you who aren't watching live, that is Gallowap, Gallowop, as in Zacharias Phoebe Gallowop.
I hate it here.
But seriously, shout out to Manscaped. We do love the product, and I know I just took a job in sales, and as I say at that job, I don't like being a pushy salesman, but I do believe in this product. I think it's a good product, and I'm really excited to continue having them as a sponsor. So,
absolutely. Oh, and guys, reminder: this week, since we both lost the bet last week, the agreement was we have to go out into intersection, not into traffic, but hold a sign on the side of the road that says something that the other one decides, and we're going to wear what the other one decides. So, Kody, you're not going to know what your sign says until the day, but you are going to hold the sign in a bikini. That is absolutely what you're going to do.
A bikini, huh?
Yeah.
And if I don't have a bikini?
Obviously, I'll send you one.
Oh, so you get to pick out the bikini.
I get to pick out the bikini.
Okay. Well, you get to stand outside in a maid's outfit.
Do that anyway. I don't care.
But your sign is going to say, "Gay Jews for Trump." Whoo! Where do you live again? You don't live in Texas, do you?
I live in Virginia.
Okay. I'm excited to see people's reactions, right? Because they're going to be so conflicted.
Jesus Christ. All right, fine, whatever. And of course, we have to film this, and it does get up and put on content. So
yeah. So you didn't decide what my sign is going to say yet, or you just?
No, I know what it's going to say. You're just not going to know until the day of. I'm having Allison make it.
Oh, you're having Did she already know this?
Maybe. I don't know. I haven't talked to her about it.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I feel very betrayed that I didn't know this was already happening.
But yeah, so keep an eye out for that content, guys, because that's going to be terrible.
That's going to be so bad. But it should be pretty exciting, and it should make pretty good TikToks. It's going to be rough.
Yeah.
Why do we do this to ourselves again?
I don't know. A need for validation and past trauma, I'm guessing. But
that is probably a good note to end on, actually.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, that's our show, guys. Thank you for coming out. We had some great questions tonight, as always. We're going to get back to interviews next week. Is there anything else you want to say, Kody?
Yeah. Stay woke, sheeple.
Oh, that's my line. I like that one.